For more on the markets, we cross to Nompumelelo Siziba. She's standing by at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Nompumelelo, still reaction from the markets to the budget speech yesterday?
Thanks very much, Nzinga. Yes, well, it would seem that the local currency did firm after Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba's speech on the budget. So seemingly a positive reaction, but we'll get some analysis on that in just a moment. Generally speaking, as you mentioned, global equities markets in the doldrums, and that's on the back of expectations that the US Fed will raise rates come March. But I don't quite understand why, because the expectation has been there for quite some time, but nevertheless, it's the nature of the markets. And in company news, we've heard that Sibanye-Stillwater has announced an annual loss in earnings. So the question that we're asking is that, has it been running too hard with its acquisitions? Let's take a look at the indicators. Well, we have a new guest on the show. His name is Devin Shute. He's from the Robert Group and based in Durban. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks, Nampu. Good to be here.
Good stuff. Now, let's take a look at these Fed minutes that came out for January. They seem to have caused a bit of a frenzy in global markets. Why?
So, I mean, if you remember what happened in the beginning of February, markets globally were moving up beautifully, low volatility, and then the concern crept in that inflation was moving higher than expected, particularly on the wage side, and that just caused a shock to markets. We saw a spike in volatility and risk assets sell off significantly. I think the markets come to terms that rates may rise faster than possibly expected last year, although, as you alluded to, it's probably been priced in 3 rate increases from the Fed this year. So I think oftentimes it now becomes a knee-jerk reaction for selling off if things have got maybe a little bit too toppish.
All right. And then let's come straight to yesterday's budget.
Yes.
How did we see shares, bonds and the Rand respond, and why?
Yeah, so bonds reacted positively. We saw those yields drop significantly. Chatting to international strategists yesterday, they viewed it as very favorably. Our bonds still provide very compelling real returns globally if you look at it in that regard. Equities also responded favorably. Financials particularly welcomed the budget. The currency strengthened up about 10 cents during the finance minister's speech. So I think, if anything, maybe there was a bit of relief that the budget wasn't worse. But I think we really do have to view it in perspective that the economy is still in an incredibly tough place. And, you know, although we've increased some taxes and we say we're going to reduce expenditure, the question is, how do we get growth going? How do we implement reforms through the ruling party effectively? How do we get action to really get this economy growing? And those questions, to my mind, remain unanswered.
Indeed. You also mentioned off-air that now Treasury has allowed fund managers like yourself a little bit more allowance in terms of how much you can invest offshore. Just tell us about that.
Yes, this I like. So the offshore allowances for regulated investment products, our collective investments, was increased by 5 percentage points. So for collective investments, gone from 25 to 30%. African investments has now gone from a 5% to a 10% allocation. And for the end investor, I think that's great. In terms of portfolio diversification, we're now able to tap into the much broader global markets in that regard. And I think that will be well received. If we look at the asset management industry as a whole, particularly on the equity side, generally managers are already using that full allocation. So I expect that to continue with the increase.
You don't, if you do tap on that ability or that lever, surely you wouldn't invest in American equities because they're well overpriced, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the metrics you look at, if you look at earnings multiples, there's only twice in history where the US market has been more expensive than it is now. So yeah, I wouldn't be chasing those type of returns. But there are pockets of opportunity. Some of Europe's starting to look attractive. Asia's come on stream. The emerging markets have got some good tailwinds. But we also do like the South African story at the moment. SA Inc. stocks, although some of the large caps have run very hard, there are opportunities.
critically speaking, was enough done in the budget for us to avoid that downgrade from Moody's?
The $100 billion question. Look, I don't think anyone really knows. I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think there was enough certainty there to maybe just buy us some more time again, but it's going to come down to pretty tough reforms and execution. And what I'm looking for is detail on the expenditure side, which we were told expenditure is going to decrease by 85 billion rand over 3 years, but zero detail was given on that. The impact on services will be felt there. So how does that look? We're all still wondering.
Indeed. Well, we will definitely be pushing those questions as the year goes on. And let's take a look at Sibanye-Stillwater.
Yes.
Coming out with their annual earnings. They've suspended the dividend. People have loved them because they've always paid good dividends. And they, reported an annual loss. Have these guys overextended themselves? They've been acquiring firms left and right, including Lonmin.
Yeah, I mean, they've acquired so many platinum assets now. They're one of the world's largest platinum producers, and that's happened in a fairly short space of time. They've had taken on a lot of debt to be able to bed down those acquisitions. This is the first time they've cut the final dividend. If you remember, they also cut the interim dividend. They did a share issue to compensate shareholders, but it's not the same. And I think shareholders will be disappointed. I think they're in a precarious situation at the moment, is that their operations need to be strong now to pay off that debt as quickly as possible. If not, they could find themselves over-indebted, and that could have an impact on the balance sheet.
From your perspective, would you rush for the exits with them?
No, I mean, I wouldn't panic. You've got Neil Froneman, who is a seasoned operator there. I think you can back management. You just wonder if they've maybe just gone a little bit too far in terms of overextending themselves. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there, but yeah, I think you've got to be cautious.
All right, and Anglo-American, very quickly, they came out with their annual results. Commodities doing them a good favour.
Yeah, I mean, those results look really good to me. Doubling earnings, doubling cash flow, halving debt. So almost an opposite story at the moment. The dividends come back. So yeah, really a good news story for shareholders that have weathered quite a volatile ride with the company.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much for your insights. It's been a pleasure engaging you. Well, that was Devin Schutte. He's from the Robert Group. After a short break, it's Nzinga with more business news for you.